Musk, who I was sure is about to become an historic figure. He already was. He got Chris on a phone call after we'd given him a heads up. He's like, come and be the CEO of Twitter. And
in 2006, Hamish McKenzie was writing a small blog in rural New Zealand. Like, you were a journalist, you were a writer. That's not somebody who's necessarily associated with going on to raise 100 million or so that you have done with Substack.
Everyone who worked in media knew what the problems were. They just didn't know how to solve them.
After years of grinding, he broke through, landing a role as a lead writer at a scrappy little startup. The company, Tesla. The boss, Elon Musk. Most people would have stayed for that ride. Hamish did not. Instead, he set out to build a platform to rival the social media giants.
We had 3 of us working away 2 years into this and $17 million in the bank.
That platform became Substack. Elon tried to buy it and he failed. Then he bought Twitter instead and picked a fight.
He got mad about us. The Twitter game was the game we're actually trying to disrupt, not the game we wanted to play or be part of, and decided to declare war on us instead.
Today, Substack hasn't just survived, it's thriving, with over 5 million paid subscriptions, backing from Silicon Valley's top investors, and a growing army of independent writers. It's become a heavyweight of the creator economy.
Things like typos, I think, are going to be more of a premium because they indicate that there's a human here doing this.
Make sure you subscribe so we can continue to get bigger and bigger guests. You've had some remarkable growth over the last couple of years, right?
Yeah, and the start of this year in particular has been hot for Substack's growth. We're now more than 5 million paid subscriptions. There's tens of millions of active subscriptions, which means someone's on a mailing list and actively engaging with someone's content over email or in the Substack app. I think we just revealed that there are more than 50 people or publications making more than $1 million a year on Substack, and it's a pretty significant media economy at the moment, but it's still got a long way to go. It's still in its sort of early years,
right? And how many employees do you have as well?
We're about 100-ish people, maybe just a tick over that now.
Yeah. And what do they break down doing?
Sort of, the company's kind of split in half, basically, between people who work on products and building the software, and then people who work with publishers and doing customer support, that kind of stuff. So, and marketing and communications. So, it's kind of a nice mix between the arts and the sciences.
Yeah. And so, I have this skepticism about Substack and whether the model can work in the UK, right? And to explain to listeners, just to start with, I just think the BBC is dominant. People are used to free media in the UK, and also we don't have as much of a tipping culture. So, a lot of the Substack model is people paying £8 to £10 a month, right, for their favourite journalists, favourite media, etc. And I just wonder whether the model can really take hold here in the UK, but you're about to tell me why I'm completely wrong on that.
Oh yeah, it's embarrassingly wrong. What the hell? Where are you getting your information from? The UK is our second largest market. It's the US is biggest, obviously. That's where we're based. That's our backyard. But the UK has a significant number of top publishers making good money from names that are well established, like the Nick Cohens of the world, the Dominic Cummings of the world, and rising star kind of names who I'll have to go and check up and send you a list about later. I forgot to do my homework. But there's also Joe Thompson, who's writing about gardening. There's a range of people who cover cooking. Yota Ottolenghi just got on recently. He's doing extremely well. So we see...
And BBC History as well, right?
BBC History seems to have started recently. I'm not sure if they're monetizing, but they've established a presence there. Yeah, and there's plenty of people who are treating Substack as kind of like their blog or their free podcast without the intention of monetizing, but they add to the network and they add to the vitality of the culture there. But I don't think the lack of I actually don't know if the tipping culture is a relevant thing, because we don't actually consider the subscription to a Substack writer or creator as being akin to a tip. We think it's demonstrating or showing that you value something so much that you're willing to pay a recurring payment, not just a one-off like throwing a few pennies, that this work is valuable enough to you that you want it to exist for yourself and for others, and you want the creator or the writer or the podcaster or the filmmaker on the other end of that to thrive. And so, £8 a month is not a trivial amount of money. I think that's a real vote for a kind of culture that you want to flourish.
And where did the name come from, Substack?
The name came from Chris. So the three founders of Substack, Chris, Gerard, and me. It started off in the very early days of just me and Chris is a product guy, and I was the sort of ex-journalist, writer-facing guy. And we're batting names around between us and sort of think about names that start with sub and that we might be able to get the .com for.
Oh, yeah.
So Subwit was one of the early ones, and I'm not sure why we thought that was even worth considering, but that was in the mix. And eventually we sort of came up with the idea of what about Substack? Because it's kind of like a stack of subscriptions, or the technology stack for subscription publishing, or you might make stacks of cash. But the most important things were it was a relatively easy to remember and spell name that we could get the .com for cheaply. It was about $2,000. And it wasn't so easy to mock, one of the many names are easy to mock. But the worst we've got is it sounds like maybe like a stack of Subway sandwiches.
Yep.
Or the existence of Substack implies a Dom stack, neither of which we're too upset about.
And tell us about those early days, because you have quite an untraditional sort of tech founder background, right? You were a journalist, you were a writer. Yeah. That's not somebody who's necessarily associated with going on to raise, the 100 million or so that you have done with Substack. Yeah. What tell us about that and the kind of origin stories and how you funded it, because $2,000 was probably still quite a lot at the time, right?
Yeah, when $2,000 for that .com was a lot at the time. We were being very careful with our money at that stage. Yes, I'm a journalist by background. I had done all sorts of journalism jobs, mostly in the print realm, and had finished writing the book in 2017, which was about how Tesla has catalyzed the energy transition for automotive. And Chris, who's the CEO of Substack and is my co-founder and is the smart genius behind the Substack model, had finished working at his company, which was Kick, which is a large messaging app. And he was taking some time off to figure out what he wanted to do next and indulging some of his passions. And one of the things was he wanted to get back to writing. And he wrote this blog post that he never actually ended up publishing, but he shared it with me because I was a writer friend. I'd also done some work at Kick, and that's how I got to know him. And he asked me for my feedback on this blog post he had drafted. And in it, he was decrying the negative incentives of social media and how they were dragging us as a society, including mainstream media, into this kind of bad place where the way to win, the way to get ahead was to be sensationalist or divisive or shout the loudest just to win the attention game. And my feedback to him was this is a great essay. All the points he was making were really sound. But everyone who worked in media knew what the problems were. They just didn't know how to solve them. And so I suggested include a couple of paragraphs about what could be better, what would have to change. And that led to a conversation that led to Substack and Chris saying, well, you need to make the audience the customer instead of the advertisers the customer. And he worked on me to come and start this company with him. And I was really reluctant to do it because I didn't dream of being a tech founder. And I know it's a difficult kind of job. And I was also just about to have my first child. My wife and I have given birth to our now 7-year-old at the time, he was born in the same month that we registered the company. Right. But Chris was very persuasive, and he wore me down over some time. And my wife told me I had to go and do this as well. She gave me the permission to go and try this crazy thing. And so I thought, why not? Because if this thing did actually work, then it could become really meaningful and profound.
And clearly, 7 years later, it has done. What have been some of the kind of major moments along the way? The sort of the kind of jump moments.
Well, we started off calling it a platform for making it simple to start a subscription publication. And that proved too difficult to grasp for some people. They thought, do you mean like an academic journal? Do you mean like a magazine? So we thought, fuck it. We'll just say we make it simple to start a paid email newsletter. And which gave us a great running start because people could easily grasp what an email newsletter was. Even though it wasn't just that. You published a Substack, it went to email and to the web. And you could have comments, etc. And soon enough, video and audio. And it's kind of put us in this difficult position because here we are 7 years later, people still anchor on the idea that it's an email newsletter platform. But really a Substack is a channel that you own where you can have a direct relationship with your audience, get paid by subscriptions and publish whatever you want, if it's in video or audio or text. So realizing that we could just talk about it in that way was a big moment. Early on as well, opening it up so that anyone could start a Substack newsletter without it having to be just a paid thing or having to be by invite only, which it was in those very earliest days. That was a big moment for us. And then there have been so many other moments along the way, but the pandemic was probably the major turning point, or not turning point, acceleration point, because we've sort of gone up on a steady curve in terms of growth. But the start of the pandemic saw a real surge in people publishing and big names coming to the platform and revenue growth, because all of a sudden there was a lot more uncertainty about media jobs. Yeah. People were getting laid off, and other people were worried about maybe they might get laid off. Other places were closing down, and also people were like stuck in their houses with nothing to do but scroll on their phones or start new projects. So those are some of the
podcasts.
Start podcasts, yeah.
Exactly.
Know anyone?
It's true, right? Yeah.
So yeah, those are some of the big moments.
And was there a moment when you were sort of, what have been the moments that have taken you aback, I suppose? Like, was there a moment somebody sort of joined that you hadn't been expecting, or obviously, and also you've taken like some serious money from Andreessen Horowitz on the way as well, which is quite a kite mark of approval as well. Yeah,
well, maybe I can get back to fully answering that question you asked earlier that I forgot to finish answering, which was that in those early days, we funded it out of our own pockets. So for months, the only reason I was able to pay rent is because my grandmother happened to die at the right time. She passed down some money to my dad, who passed down some money to me, and I used that as my paycheck for the first 6 months. Chris had a little bit of money that he could throw into the pot. And then that got us through to a point where we got into Y Combinator, which is a big accelerator in Silicon Valley, and we could raise a seed round at the end of that, which was a couple of $1 million. And then we're humming along quite nicely, just the three of us building this thing. Chris and I had convinced Jiraj, the CTO, to come in early. And then in 2019, Andreessen Horowitz came to us and said, well, you guys should raise a round with us. We'll make it really founder-friendly, and we'll make it so easy and fast for you to do that you won't have to worry about it being a distraction, because there are only three of us, so we spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to raise money. So
Andreessen came to you, right?
They came to us, and they did it. We did the whole round in 5 days. We had a coffee on a Monday with Andrew Chen, who's our investor there, and then by Friday we'd signed a term sheet, and it was $15 million by the time the round was done, which really was a ridiculous situation because we hadn't spent any of the $2 million that we'd raised from our seed round, because there's only three of us. And so we had three of us working away on Substack, 2 years into this, and $17 million in the bank. And we're working out of Chris's living room in San Francisco.
So I love the way you talk about a seed round being 2 million, by the way, just it's quite different context from
Silicon Valley is not a normal place.
But what did you then spend the 17 million on, right? Because I always think that's, founders largely raising money to go hire people, right? Two things, it's hire and marketing. So what did you then think, right, well, we're going to spend the 17 million on?
Well, we spent a long time not spending that money, even after, starting to hire some people early on. But employees are really expensive in San Francisco. And we were determined at that point, pre-pandemic, to co-locate everyone in San Francisco, put them under the same roof. And by the time you pay, especially for engineers, their salaries are really high. Then there's a bunch of benefits, but the housing price is really expensive in the area, so you kind of need to do that. So it doesn't take long to really start burning through that kind of cash. We started to spend a lot on like a combined sort of partnerships marketing initiative, which was to help convince writers that they could come start on Substack and be successful, and they could say no to the jobs they were already in or to other opportunities they were being presented with. And so we did a thing where we would pay a minimum guarantees to some writers who we thought fit the mold and who really wanted to try this model and could see the potential for themselves in it. And we paired the minimum guarantee with a promise of 15% of the subscription revenue they generated for that first year.
Yeah.
So it was like a training wheels kit. And after the year had ended, we kick away the training wheels. So they'll just revert to the normal Substack model, which is they keep 90% of the revenue, we keep 10% of the revenue. And that turned out to be a really good way to get the flywheel spinning, getting a lot of really good, credible names, publishing great work in the ecosystem. And it helped the name Substack get out in the media world, and it sort of gave rise to the company and the brand at the time.
Really clever, right? And you got some people like Graham Ruddock and Yoshi Herman as well, who like been on this show and created great businesses off the back of it as well. And of course, the biggest UK Substacker, Dominic Cummings as well. That must have been a moment and a half when he signed up.
It was a crazy. He was a crazy moment. Like a lot of the people in the US weren't even aware of who he was. Yeah. And but the Brexit thing was raging at the time, and the various scandals that he was involved with, and so we started getting a lot of interest from the UK, and for a while people sort of associated Substack with just like being a Dominic Cummings adjacent platform, something must be his politics, but Substack is a totally neutral platform where anyone from any stripe can come and publish, and we have people from all across the political spectrum. Including Dominic Cummings.
His stuff is fascinating on it. And where do you see the kind of next 5 years going? Like, what are your kind of like hopes and dreams for it? Like you've I wouldn't say you've pivoted. You've added video and audio to it in the last year or so. Like, what does the future of kind of Substack and media look like?
Yeah, increasingly people are understanding Substack as a place that you can go to, and you can find great voices there to start a relationship with, a media relationship with. And those voices might be most comfortable expressing themselves in writing, or they could be video first, or they could be podcasters, audio first. And so we're really focused on helping people understand that this is an app you can spend your time in that's a better place to find culture than the other places you might otherwise go. And the reason it's a better place to find culture is because the incentives are all aligned, where the publisher only succeeds when their audiences feel like they're getting value, and the platform, Substack, only succeeds when the publisher succeeds. The only way we make money is by taking a cut of their subscription revenue, and they own their relationships with their audience, and they own all their content, so they can pick up and leave anytime. So there's a huge pressure on us to prove that we're delivering value to those publishers, unlike the other systems where they're sort of trapped, and if Elon Musk changes his mind about what the rules are, they have to just go along with it. But also the subscription model puts upward pressure on quality. You have to like prove that you're able to hold on to and reward the attention and trust of your audience over time. So it's not just like, can I get a flash in a pan viral moment? It's, can I regularly produce quality stuff that keeps coming back and draws some people to pay for it. And so, we're creating this big network, this media network with different rules that creates a different cultural outcome from what we've seen on these other platforms in the last generation.
Are you a fan of Jimmy's Jobs of the Future? Hi, I'm Sonny, one of the producers behind the show. And we don't just make this podcast, we produce some of the best business content out there, working with global brands and founders. Over the past year, we've flown around the world and demand keeps growing. And with 4 prime ministers trusting us with their appearances on this show, you're in safe hands. So, if you're already in the market for a podcast or standout business content, why not start with us? Drop me a line at sunny@boxlight.io, try our podcast calculator, or book a meeting at boxlight.io. That's boxlight.io. Now, back to Jimmy.
Where do you think you might be by 2030 in terms of paid subscriptions?
Oh, how long? That's only 5 years away. God.
Yeah.
Well, we're at more than 5 million paid subscriptions today. less than 6 months ago, we're at about 4 million paid subscriptions.
Okay.
And the growth there has accelerated. We've been going for 7.5 years. The app network effects have really only been around for like the last 2 years. We launched Notes, which is this discovery and discussion feed on the homepage of the app.
And one of the things like you've hired for is like sort of community people, and I think that's a fascinating area. And I guess I'm going to ask you two parts about the community. A is you've hired community managers to kind of like manage journalists, help them on board, all that type of thing. And you've got for our store as well here, who is an amazing journalist and background that does that, particularly in the UK. But then also it's the writers kind of building their communities as well. And I'm just fascinated by what you think the future of community looks like, because you are also seeing the traditional newspapers try and do this. So the Times is doing a lot around in the UK about trying to build a community. Now I think it's possible the Times is going to be able to do that. Whether other traditional media brands will be able to do, I'm not quite so sure. But yeah, I'd love your kind of reflections on the future of media communities.
Yeah, I think we're like it. The old system in media used to be much more about broadcasting. Here's the official voice, here's the official opinion. You will sit there and consume it, and we'll never hear back from you, or we'll like hear back from you in the form of like letters to the editor, which might take 3 weeks to get to us. In the social media era, or in the sort of internet, the modern internet era, people expect to be able to talk back.
Yeah.
They know that you can hear them talking back, and it's much more of a conversation, especially as the media gets more and more distributed, and it's not so much concentrated around a few pillars that are dominated by a few tycoons. I think that the media system becomes much more of a conversation, and I think community is central to that, or a natural outgrowth of that. So a lot of Substacks have extremely lively communities. One of the top revenue earner as an individual on Substack is Heather Cox Richardson, who's a history professor, and she writes these daily blog posts or letters about the day's news, the day's political news in the US, and she has such a devoted audience of people who are just grateful for the work she keeps doing, that she keeps showing up for them, that every time she publishes a post, there's thousands of comments. And the funny thing is that it's totally free, that Substack. So she's a top earner. She's earning millions of dollars. She publishes the same thing on Facebook. As a history
professor.
A history professor. She publishes the same thing on Facebook for free. You get it on Substack for free. But if you're a paid subscriber, you get one perk, which is you can leave a comment. So thousands of comments on each one of her posts from these people who are so like in there with her. They feel like they're invested in the mission with her. And That's her Substack is absolutely not just like a series of blog posts. It's all the people around those blog posts talking to her and talking to each other.
That's really interesting. What are the sort of, give us some like profiles of other Substackers. Let's give them some.
Yeah, a couple of things popped into my mind actually. The British ones. So Jim Waterson, who was the media editor of the Guardian until recently, left and started a local news Substack called London Centric, which is brilliant. It's been nominated for an award, and he does feature reporting, basically a mix of news reporting and feature reporting. It's a one-man shop. He might end up hiring other people to help him. I know it's a lot of hard work, but it's really a giant success already. Less than a year since he launched it. Polly Vernon from the Times has a really productive and active Substack. So there's journalists who are doing it. There are people who might have thought of themselves as cooking influencers first, who are like big on Instagram or big on TikTok, or are making the move over to Substack. So there's a woman in the US who has a giant TikTok audience. Her name's Violet Witchell. She got famous for a dense bean salad that went viral. And even though she has millions of people following, more than 1 million people following her on TikTok and about 1 million on Instagram, she makes several times more money on Substack than she does from those other two platforms combined, with the brand deals she gets from those places. Her subscriptions are the thing that really support her. And there's a ton of other, like Emma Gannon was sort of originally a podcaster and an author, and she's found a home on Substack that she really values because she speaks directly to her people in this intimate space. and there's enough there that it makes her a really good living. So yeah, I could go on and on with this stuff, but that's a sampling.
And let's also talk about Elon Musk, because you worked for him for a while, and then let's do that first, right? So you were a journalist, and then you went in-house at Tesla to kind of be a kind of like in-house journalist, content writer, etc. Sounds like a fascinating role. What was that like? Yeah,
that would have been a fascinating role. So I was writing for a tech publication called Pando Daily. I'd written a few things about Elon. And the editor at Faber & Faber here in London reached out. Julian Luce. I love Julian Luce. He reached out and said, do you think there's a good way to do a book about this guy? And do you think he would be interested in cooperating? And I said, well, I know that he's read some of my stuff and liked it. Let me see if I can get him to cooperate. And I got in touch with him by tracking down his mother's email address, because she had back then a website for her job being a nutritionist. And she immediately passed on my email to him. He immediately got me on a call through his PR person, and then on the call said, I don't know about this book, but have you ever thought about like working for a company like Tesla? And I thought, it's kind of interesting. I tried to talk him into doing the book, and eventually we just put that aside. And I thought, this could be an incredible opportunity. I didn't dream of leaving journalism. I love being a journalist. But the idea of sort of being an in-house journalist, telling the story of Tesla as it came up in 2014, it was 2014 when I started, working under Elon Musk, who I was sure was about to become an historic figure. He already was, but just wasn't so widely known then as he is now. So I took that job, had a great time there, but it was also like a wild experience, full of ups and downs. It was just over a year by the time I left. I had 3 bosses in the space of that year, because the communications team at Tesla is not exactly the calmest waters. Elon wants to control everything down to the comma, as you might imagine. So it was really hard to be an in-house journalist, and instead I became a sort of the writer on the comms team, which is the most cursed team in the history of corporate America. And I left because I lined up this part-time work with with Kik, who I'd become friends with the CEO. Yeah. And Kik was a nice Canadian company, almost the opposite culturally to Tesla, which was a throw everyone under the bus culture, throw everyone under the dual motor Model S culture. And I wrote a book. I wrote that book that I mentioned earlier, which was a bit of an arduous ordeal because Elon didn't want me to write it once he got wind about it.
It's all about electric cars and how sort of they were going.
It's about how Tesla sort of catalyzed the electric car revolution, and deserves a ton of credit for that.
I mean, it's an amazing story. Like, whatever you make of what he's done in the last few months and whatever, like the sort of spotting of that is pretty extraordinary.
Yeah, and people try to downplay what he's done with Tesla. It was started by these other people, but no. Elon made Tesla happen. When Tesla was about to go bankrupt in 2008 during the financial crisis, he was transferring money out of his own bank account to make payroll for the people in that company, saved it from almost certain death. He's done that a couple of times, and did the impossible, which is start a car company in the United States of America that went on to succeed. And not only a car company, an electric car company, fighting the most regulatorily captured industry in the world, maybe.
Do you drive an electric car now?
I do. I've got a Model 3. I bought it in 2019. As soon as I could. The mass market electric car from Tesla. I took an Uber over here, actually. It turned out to be like a 2015 Model S.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that was fun. But yeah, by the time Chris and I started Substack in 2017 and I was finishing off the book, I thought, well, here we go. A company built around writers and writing. I don't ever have to hear from Elon Musk again. But then he went and bought Twitter in 2022 and tried to acquire Substack. And we were just about to launch this discussion and discovery feed, which we called Notes, which is a lot like Twitter, just good. And he got mad about us launching that and decided to declare war on us instead.
Yeah.
Sort of cut us off from the API, banned the Substack name and the search terms for a couple of days, suppressed and downranked any mention of Substack, and suppressed Substack links. And that pretty much Twitter was already on a steep decline in terms of the traffic it sent to Substack writers. For some of them, it was still really important, though, and that put an end to that. And, but it was okay for us because we needed to be totally independent of other social networks for growth anyway, and that's why we're building our own growth network, which is the app.
But you did think about it for a little while when he made the acquisition offer, right?
No, we didn't really think of. Well, if for a little while you mean 5 minutes,
Okay. All right.
because he made the offer in a hurry. He got Chris on a phone call after we'd given him a heads up that we're going to launch this thing, and he's like, "Don't launch that. Come and be the CEO of Twitter, and we'll acquire Substack." And I mean, it is on like step back. It's a really interesting idea that you might pair this short form discovery network that has a huge network effect and hundreds of millions of users, and is quite a neat partner to this long form publishing platform that has a paid subscription business model. But ultimately, we're determined, independent of the personality characteristics that Elon has, independent of that, the Twitter game was the game we're actually trying to disrupt. We're trying to like improve on, not the game we wanted to play or be part of.
And so I asked you this earlier as well, but what's your ambitions for it? Like, where do you want to take it now?
Well, we are true believers in the virtue of the Substack model, which is not to say it's perfect, but it is a giant improvement on the status quo. And the status quo is social media, basically, where publishers and creators are stripped of their power and where audiences are sort of stripped of their agency. In the Substack model, publishers and creators and writers, journalists, they own their audience, they own their content, and they can make good money through a business model that is simple, transparent, and it works. And the audiences can vote for the culture that they want to thrive with their email addresses or their money. And we've seen a lot of people make a great living from this who otherwise were worried about what their options were for the future. And we want to take that model as far as it can possibly go, not only because it helps the writers and the creators and the journalists and the publishers of the world, and not only because it produces a different kind of media and a different kind of culture that we think is actually vastly better than the status quo or than the dominant system from social media, but also because there's kind of like a moral imperative from our point of view. We are mission driven on this. The reason we started Substack was to help there be a better chance of positive cultural outcomes than what we were seeing, which was a world that was struggling to understand each other, where trust was being eroded, and where like the worst instincts of human behavior were being rewarded by these systems that don't care about seeking truth, that don't care about building understanding between each other, and mostly just care about like, will you keep on scrolling down the feed so we'll show you more ads. So for the business reasons and for the good of the culture reasons and for this like moral imperative reason, I think we need to go from being just a network that has like 5 million paid subscriptions to something more like 50 million paid subscriptions, and then keep on going.
Is there ever a world where there could be like a Substack TV channel in its own right, or like, just sort of summing up the best Substacks of the week, etc.?
Yeah, definitely. We're talking about things like that. So a TV channel or an app on like Apple TV or Roku or something like that. You turn it on and here's some of your favorite Substack creators. Yeah. I think creators and publishers in the Substack ecosystem will actually go on and launch your own TV channels as well. They won't be like linear TV necessarily, but they could look a lot like the YouTube type of experience.
Because my theory on this is that quite a lot of corporate brands are going to start creating their own podcasts and TV shows. I mean, they are anyway, right? But actually, like one of the problems that I have with the UK media is that there isn't as much business and economics as there should be. I think it plays a much bigger role in our society than the coverage. It's nothing like the United States business media ecosystem. And I just think that actually you might end up with a situation where Goldman Sachs can arguably make a better business TV show than Sky News can anyway, if they decide to do that. So that's one of my kind of theses.
They've got the chance to, right? Like, there's new land to build on, and anyone's welcome to come and build these new media products on this new land. Some of them might be traditional media institutions. Some of them might be like people who are straight out of high school. Some of them might be corporate institutions who somehow figure out a way to win people's trust for their media products.
Who are the Substacks? Who are the Substackers that you don't miss? I mean, because you must have a challenge. I mean, I imagine in the early days
you cannot miss.
Yeah, but you probably, when it first started, I imagine you probably read like almost every Substack that came out, right?
I got every single one in my email inbox, every post.
Which ones now are you like? Do you really kind of like?
I'm always wary about doing this because I hate to be seen to be playing favorites.
Yeah.
Or for people to like read the tea leaves to see if they can determine what my politics are. So with the caveat that don't read anything to this into this about my politics, because my politics are mysterious even to myself.
Well done.
I really like Ted Joyer. He's a man we discussed before coming into this room, who writes about culture generally, but music a lot, and the media.
Yeah.
I really like Sam Criss, who's another London-based Substack writer, actually, who's an essayist, but he writes really demented essays, like totally deranged, fever dream essays that are extremely literate and fun and funny, and sometimes totally made up, or large portions of them are totally made up. I recommend him a lot. And then some others, I have to rack my brains a little bit because I'm not good at doing the tip of my tongue regurgitate what I read.
That's all right.
Yeah.
We can edit that bit.
Yeah.
Let's ask a classic podcast question at the moment. How is AI going to change it all?
AI is going to have a huge effect on society, technology, culture, media, definitely. I tend to think of AI as like a huge opportunity for writers and creators and people who haven't until now thought of themselves as writers and creators, because all of a sudden they have these superpowers to help express themselves more perfectly, which isn't to say perfectly, but more perfectly. Like maybe I wasn't good at making videos, but I really want to communicate to people in video. AI makes that way more possible now. I also think it's like we have a feature called Substack Live, where you can go live through video through the Substack app on your phone, and it's kind of like a public FaceTime call. And I'm doing a Substack Live call with you. It's just like a casual-ish interview. At the end of our 30-minute conversation, the AI tools, although we never tell people it's AI, it's just tools, generates these clips for you that are the highlights from the conversation we just had. And they come with the subtitles baked into them. And then I can just click a button and it'll go to all the social networks to help promote this thing. In fact, we're even doing this automatically from people's shows when they publish their long-form video on Substack. The system will automatically create a clip without you even having to do anything and put it in the Substack notes feed. So that's like a kind of marketing superpower or a production superpower that writers and creators can have that they didn't previously have. And then it helps the company because we can use similar tools to help us be more productive and make greater stuff. But I also think as AI drives the cost of content creation to zero and the cost of content distribution to close to zero too, the value of the human-to-human relationship goes up. Because in a world of abundant quality content, because this stuff people can use AI to make amazing video, amazing pieces of writing, amazing art. The soul connection is going to matter more. Like that, there's a human standing behind this. That it was a human who had the eye for this. It's a human who's really wanting to communicate something here. It's a human who's telling me this story. That stuff is all going to go up in value. So things like typos, I think, are going to be more of a premium because they indicate that there's a human here doing this. Remember, like this is a person just like you, and if you support that person, they can thrive. And this is already happening, right? There's the biggest category on Substack by revenue is U.S. politics, and there's no shortage of U.S. politics writing in the world, even without Substack. It's
No
kind
shortage
of
of it in the UK.
yeah, or anyway. So it's kind of irrational that you'd pay Matt Iglesias, a famous US politics writer, about the same as what you pay Netflix, given that you can get so much writing anywhere else. But what matters is that you want Matt Iglesias' take. You want to see the world through his eyes. You want to like access to his mind. You want to get this raw feed from his mind, and you don't care if it's not perfect. In fact, maybe it's better if it's not perfect. Maybe it's better if you can argue with that a little bit. You see a little bit of the sloppiness in his thinking as he's constructing this post that he's churning out one of these each day. And that is the thing that's valuable, that intimate access, that real human relationship. So I think it's actually potentially a very good world for the culture makers of the world.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of that. It's funny the typo thing you mentioned, because my wife the other day was like, we're talking about using ChatGPT to sort of check my Substacks and whatever, and she was just like making the point of, well, you don't have any typos anymore. And I said exactly that, and I've started swearing a little bit in some of my Substacks, podcasts, and LinkedIn posts. Sorry, Mum, but partly to
it's smart strategic business decision.
But it is partly to demonstrate to people that it's not all kind of like AI generated stuff.
Yeah.
So what do you think the future of intelligence looks like? I mean, that is a very meta question, I realise I've just asked, but what do you think it looks like? What are people going to value more?
God, man.
I should ask you this not off the back of a 10-hour flight. When you...
Yeah, I mean, they're going to value what's real. They're going to value being together in person.
Yeah.
They're going to value knowing that there's a human in the mix. Which is not to say that the capabilities that this artificial intelligence gives us won't be valuable. That stuff will be valuable too. Knowing that, like, I don't have to, like, vacuum my house or spend weeks on that deep research report, or like wade through all my taxes. Like maybe in the US this is a huge problem. Like I'm a well-educated person, and I can't figure out how the tax system works. I don't know how to fill in my forms, and I get really pained just thinking about it.
Yeah.
If an AI can just do all that stuff for me, I'll be so much happier, and it will do it so much better, and it will like save me money. But for many things, I mean, we're social creatures. The humans evolved because we cooperate socially and understand each other socially, and that took millions of years. And so I don't think that's going away. I think people will just want that more. I think people have to remember what they want, and what they want is to like be in community with each other, to be in family with each other, to like feel love and to love. I think that all that stuff is only going to become more pronounced in value.
Let's finally talk, not for long, because I don't want to go like too deep on this particularly, but Ted Goyer, who you mentioned earlier, wrote a very interesting piece about how the next election might be won by a Substacker. And I think it's a very interesting thing, because obviously everyone at the moment is taking what Trump did at the end of last year and is now like, right, podcast. We've had the Mayor of London on. We've got lots of politicians wanting to come on the podcast at the moment because they're sort of trying to emulate that. I totally get that. Yeah. But I also think by 2028, by the time of the next UK and US election, it may well have all shifted again. So you've had a couple of big sort of politicians come on the platform lately, Pete Buttigieg, and so on. Have I got that right this time?
Buttigieg, yeah.
Buttigieg. I got it right the first time beforehand. Now I've got it wrong. But what's what's your kind of like thoughts on that? Because he's not going to be going on it to kind of make money and make a paid subscription, right? But he's already managed to amass sort of close to 500,000 subs.
Yeah, Pete Buttigieg. I think Stacey Abrams came on recently as well. There's a bunch of like
Tom Tugendhat in the UK today as well.
Yeah. Well, I think there is a good chance that Substack is going to play a significant role in the next election in the US. I think what we're currently seeing is the result of kind of like a chaos media system that interacts with a chaos way of doing politics and a chaos culture, which is that shouting system I described before, where there are a few social media platforms that dominate, and everyone can have a voice in those systems, but they don't actually have power. The power is concentrated at the top. And those kings who are running those systems are forcing people to play a particular kind of game, which is not the good discourse game. It's the maximize attention game. And that game is won by people often who are most willing to shout the loudest, be the most extreme, and be wild. And that is not a good recipe for discourse or like a calm, reasoned politics. The previous era, though, had its own flaws. The previous era is more like the top-down, centralized, gate-kept era of traditional media, where there are a few official voices and a few official narratives and a few rulers as well. And the standards could be really high in that system. The quality was better, but it was a pretty rigid system as well. It could represent only a few perspectives, and new voices had a real hard time getting in. If you didn't know the right people, then good luck to you. But what we see with Substack, I hope, is the start of an emergence of a new kind of system where there is not just democratization of voice, but democratization of power as well. Because if you have economic autonomy as an independent, then you don't rely on either of those previous media systems. You don't need to win that shouting game on social media, and you don't need to win the know the right people game to get access to traditional media. And then you can be part of a new emerging system where there is actually a lot more diversity, a diversity of thought in particular, and where the power can be distributed among the many instead of the few. And I think in that kind of world, the way to win is not to be the loudest shouter or to know the right person. It's to defend your ideas at length in a more moderate environment and speak directly to people, but those people are going to expect that you are playing this game by the rules of a quality system. And I think people like Pete Buttigieg are recognizing this. They're not trying to necessarily be the next Joe Rogan or find the next Joe Rogan for the left or whatever it's going to be. That's the obsession among some corners at the moment. But they're going to where the puck is. They're skating to where the puck is going, and figuring out how to talk in a new way where they get to defend themselves and explain themselves at length to people who are willing to listen. And if we can scale that, if we can really succeed and continue with the current growth trajectory we're on, I think it's there's a very good chance that it's going to have a major influence on the type of political discourse and the type of politics and the type of leaders that emerge in the next generation.
That is brilliant. Let's finish on. Hamish McKenzie, thanks very much for coming on Jimmy's Jobs of the Future.
Thanks so much. Great to be here.